Hey there, Star Wars fans. This is B Sokol here again. Trying to do another video tournament report. This time I'm going after U.S. Nationals. It was in Columbus, Ohio last weekend and had a fantastic time and kind of wanted to share my experiences getting ready for the event, what it was like being in Columbus, and share some fun stories about some of the really cool people that were there. So, got to tell a little bit of a story associated with this. Also, kind of backing up a little bit about how I almost didn't make this um, event at all. And so, one of the things that's been happening over the last like 18 months is that I've been getting very, very sick, chronically, not very sick, but chronically sick, colds, sinus infections, all of that stuff, including after both majors this year. Got really, really sick. I'm sure some of that was like I got Robbie's like plague flu in Vegas, but I just been getting chronically sick, a lot of pain in my head, and I have had like nose problems throughout my life, but I figured it was finally time that I need to go in and see a doctor and get it looked at. So I go see a specialized surgeon over at Stanford, and the first thing they do is they run a scan of my head, and this is what they found. So this is a CT scan of looking directly at my face, so you can kind of see the eyeballs in the middle. Um, but the thing they were focusing on were those sinuses. So on the right hand side of the screen, that black area is air. And so that's like a normally functioning sinus. It's supposed to be full of air and allows things to circulate. Sinus on the other side, though, was completely blocked. And it was like keeping my nose from functioning. And so they had diagnosed pretty quickly that this was going to be the problem and why I was having some of the issues I was having. But it was unclear from the first couple scans what was actually blocking my entire sinus. And so I had to do a lot of tests after that, including the first couple screenings for cancer. They were worried it was actually a tumor, which going through the process of getting tested for cancer and then waiting for results and was not fun. But fortunately, we found out that it was not cancer. It was something else that was blocking that whole area up. But either way, they really wanted to get me scheduled for surgery quickly, just to make sure that this was being dealt with in the right manner. So I started this like back in March, probably getting tested and all that. And so I had no idea when my surgical date was going to come up. It's really just dependent on when, folks get that date scheduled on the exam. And so I get a call like 4 weeks before nationals that, or no, probably 6 weeks before nationals that they wanted to do the surgery. And that was going to be the end of July, like the day before my daughter's birthday. And, day before my daughter's birthday and 4 weeks before nationals. And I'm like, this is not a great time. I was at that point way more worried about missing my daughter's birthday than I was about missing nationals, but I wanted to do both. So go through with the surgery. They had found that was a my entire sinus was filled with infection that had walled itself off. And that's why nothing was draining. And I was having the face pain and the nose pain and the teeth pain. And so ended up being a long, difficult surgery, lost a bunch of blood, had to hold me under like 2 extra hours. And so kind of came out of it and it was a little rough for the first couple days, but then was kind of turning the corner pretty quickly. And so I was home kind of resting and had my first appointment with my doctor and like a week later and things are actually going pretty well. And so I actually bring it up with her and I'm like, I'm supposed to fly to Ohio in like 3 weeks. Is there any reason if things progress that, I could still go to that? Because she was a little concerned about you flying on an airline flight after a major head surgery but she was generally cool with it if I could just take care of some extra precautions. And so at that point, she's like, okay, I'm all in for nationals, which was really exciting. And then it really gave me something to look forward to after I was laying in bed for like basically a week, just feeling terrible. And so, but giving me something to kind of look forward to and work towards was really helpful for recovery. So that was all the backup to it. And then about a week or so after the surgery, I tried to play my first game of GEMP. And so one of the things that the doctor had said is the anesthesia they give you, especially when you're under for a couple hours like that, it'll actually it could really impact like your cognitive function for like weeks almost. And I saw that firsthand. My first Gemp game, I got, who was I playing? I played Jeff Levine. I think I was playing Hunt Down and he was playing something else. But Hunt Down, like not a hard deck to play. It's pretty linear. You go fight them there. And I was missing actions. I would forget to pull the saber. I forgot to pull the sight. Like all of this, like really bad stuff. And so I really could tell that like my head just wasn't there yet. But about like a week later, the fog kind of cleared and I could actually think straight again. And so it was really about trying to figure out what I was going to play for nationals. So I am going to pull that up again. No one wants to see that gross picture anymore. But oh, you know what? Before I talk about decks, let's talk about like the actual getting to Columbus. So I fly out there Thursday afternoon. Or no, I leave Thursday afternoon, get in Thursday around midnight, and play a game of. There's a bunch of guys that got kicked out of a hotel room, so I play Avalon with Casey and Jim Coyle and Hayes, and I become Merlin, and that just really sucks when you're Merlin and you're playing with Hayes. But play a couple games of Parade, that was super awesome. But then on Friday, Carl had arranged for us to go to the Science Museum in Columbus because they had a really cool Star Wars exhibit. And so I took a couple pictures of this. There was probably like about 20 of us that went to this thing. It was super cool. Lots of like, there was a bunch of replicas and some were like better than others, but there were some really cool ones. And so here was like a full like replica scale X-Wing with a bunch of costumes, and there was a couple of set pieces that were really cool. And so it was a really cool experience. If you paid full freight for it, it was going to be like $60 for us to go because it was a special exhibit and you had to pay separately for that. But Carl was able to work out a deal with the like group sales office. So we were able to go for like 25, which was a much more reasonable offer. But here we go. There was a full X-Wing and a bunch of props and flight suits. And this was like right when you walked in was they did like a Mos Eisley trading post with all these droids. And, I thought I had known all this stuff, but there were even a couple things in here that I did not recognize. I think AJ had to tell me about one or two of these things from like the Clone Wars cartoons and stuff like that. So, but it was just like a really cool exhibit. Like it was pretty immersive. Like they had these little sets built, and there was different little turns in the exhibits for different parts of the movie. Like this was a Mos Eisley thing, and they had a Hoth thing, and they had an Emperor's throne room, and they had a speeder bike you could sit on, and all that just really fun stuff. And we were all just nerding out and geeking out. I don't think I've included in the show, but I took a picture of, there was a chopper, the droid chopper, and I sent it to Greg Shaw because he used it to win it was a key thing for him winning the last major. And so here's your hero. And it was a really cool experience. They had this picture was intentional, but they had all these really cool Legos and action figures and all that, but it's hard to see. I didn't take a good picture up in the glare, but they actually had an honest to goodness Star Wars card. It was a Greedo from A New Hope in there. So that was a fun little like reminder that like, oh yeah, we are kind of part of this history too, even if it's a small chunk of it. Just a couple little things here. They had a whole rack full of like blasters and, lightsabers. And there was just a lot of cool pieces that they had there. And it was fun to kind of go through and take pictures of kind of your favorite part. My daughter loves Grogu, or she still calls him Baby Yoda, but I had to get a picture of that for her because that was a very authentic looking piece and just really stood out in this like black shadow box and things like that. The other really cool thing was there was a trash compactor set from A New Hope, and they had a photographer there taking pictures, and so bunch of us all crammed in there and got a good picture that Chris Kelly got for all of us. And so, like I said, we had a really good group of people there, especially for a Friday afternoon. A lot of people are traveling in usually, but there was just a lot of good people there, and it was a great way to start the event off. So, so let's talk about the decks I decided to want to play. I got a little bit of a late start because, again, I wasn't even sure I was going to go, wasn't feeling good, couldn't think things through. But got a little bit of help from my teammates, and these are what I settled on for the main event. Is I went with Throne Remains for light side. I don't know how much I should explain Throne Remains to our audience here as to not insult you, but you know, Throne Remains has been down for a little bit, but one of my teammates, Ryan Jellison, has been really trying to make it more popular in the open meta. But just a pretty standard mains deck. You are going to be choking your opponent. You're not giving them a lot of icons. You play a lot of cards that pressure their force pile, like Luke Skywalker Rebel Scout, which pressures you with weapons, and then Battle Plan Combo pressures your interrupts, and then things like Too Close to Comfort to also pressure your interrupt or weapons phase actions, and then just kind of stuff like Weapon Lev and Sense and Alter. And one of the key things nowadays, and it's quite annoying, but is you start your Insight Serves You Well, which you generally will pitch for Honor of the Jedi. And so Honor of the Jedi is a, kind of a gross card, and you can use a bunch of senses, generally pretty free until there are counterplays for it, which happened to me in the event. But generally, you're going to get a lot of free senses off with paying very little for it. The other interesting little effect you can pull with it is launching the Assault, which is mostly used to pull home one. And I definitely did that during the event, but we were talking up to the event, and we were kind of thinking we need an extra starship in there. We were thinking there might be a fair amount of dark side space, and then definitely that First Order deck was probably going to be around there. So I had come up with the idea of like sticking Profundity in there. I think it's a fun card. It comes down really cheap to an opponent's occupied system. It comes down for 2 force, and so it can really surprise an opponent. But also, the Launching the Assault has a drain bonus text if you're draining with a Star Cruiser. And so, everyone always uses that for home one, but Profundity applies as well. So if you can go to a system, you're probably going to an opponent's occupied system, but then if you take it over, you might have a drain 2 system, which is really, really powerful and not what you're expecting out of Throne Room. So otherwise, it's a pretty standard Throne Room build, lots of EPPs, lots of effects to get your activation out. Of course, it's highly open hand dependent, or at least your first hand dependent of how you're going to get things going. But, it's an explosive deck. And if you hit your activation and you hit a couple key cards, you could really be off and running, especially with going first. So for Dark Side, I played ISB. I don't recall how much it was played at the event, but ISB's been up in the meta. There's lots of good Imperial leaders and a lot of good ISB agents. And so I had been for a year or so been kind of playing with a funky deck that was like battle order combo oriented and slip sliding away based. And I was kind of getting away from that because there's just so many good Imperials now, and then being able to start Enforcement is a really good way to just keep things moving and reload your hand and protect from kind of low destinies, because you're going to be drawing a lot of characters. So I got some input from former teammate Joe Horby on this, went with kind of an established control build. Established control gets you access to your own battleground system, and then gives you some of the bonuses of mobilization points at docking bays. So I think the idea is you're generally going to want to get an Emperor down at the Imperial Square, comes down for free, move him to the adjacent docking bay, and that's going to be a +2 activation right off the bat, because you're occupying, and then the Emperor adds an icon. And then if you can spread a couple ISB agents to a couple non-battleground docking bays, generate a lot of extra force quickly, and then generally you're going to transit over to your opponent's sites, or maybe you're going to stick the spaceport docking bay at a site of your opponent's to kind of take it over. Or you can stick it at your own Fondor system, and then you have a drain 2 site and a drain 1 system that you can shuttle things in between. So there's a lot of flexibility there. Obviously, it can be pretty contingent on if you can deploy the spaceport docking bay to someone's systems. There's a couple restrictions on sites you can't deploy it to, but generally a lot of the newer ones it's available to. And then also if you're playing against decks that don't allow you to modify your force drains, things like Watcher Step or QMC will be a tougher out, because it kind of neuters part of your game plan. So it was really dependent on what you're going to see there, but I really kind of liked what I was seeing there. I decided to put in a Choke Vader. Sometimes a lot of people are doing Emperor's Enforcer, but Choke Vader is just very high leverage. One of the odd choices probably was how to treat space. A lot of folks are going with Eli and Dreadnought. They're going with Mara and Ship, but I actually kind of wanted Mara on the ground. Can surprise people, and she's a forfeit 0 weapon. So you kind of need a little more space there. So I actually went with the Conquest, which is an odd ship and didn't actually work as well as I would have hoped post-mortem. But what I was really focused on is I was really worried about Luke Saga, and I was really worried about the Han Tydirium Leia shuttle, which is fully immune and 3 destinies, and then you can't limit because they have the sister effect card or sister has it card. So I had this idea of like, well, if I can put Conquest up there, a lot of pilot space, a lot of power, I still have commands to limit, and then they try and play sister has it, and then you can cancel and interrupt with Conquest. So that was kind of the idea of I could really hold a system by canceling a command or a Antilles maneuver or something to be very impactful in the battle. But then I'll kind of talk about if that really actually came up or not. So I'm just going to start blowing through the games. I'm just talking a lot. So I do the warm-up event, bring those two decks. Just going to play the same thing, maybe make a couple changes afterwards. But game 1, I run into Kendall, and I'm playing TRM. He's playing Court. What a surprise. Kendall is playing Court. So, but, run into him at the last couple of, I ran into him like 3 times at Morristown. And so, knew it would be a very interactive game. So how that one went though, I did not go to ground very quickly. I was getting activation out. But one thing I did find is I found my profundity. And it's funny if you guys have all met Kendall, it's like maybe his a little more of his internal monologue is more external. Like we're just kind of playing for fun, but he'll talk out the turn as he's kind of going, and he's like, well, he's thinking about whether he should go to space or not, and he's counting the force, and he's like, because he's thinking home 1, and he's like, well, and I don't have the war room out, so home 1 comes down for 12, and then Akbar is free, but he's like, well, it's early in the game, and he's thinking this stuff out loud to me. He's like, well, it's early in the game. I don't even recall if I had 12 force, so maybe I just had 12. He's like, it costs you your entire turn to come down with that. And so he decides to go to space. Not super weak, but he goes to space. But I have Profundity in hand. And so this is what I was talking about. Profundity will come down for 2 force to your opponent's Nalhutta when they're occupied. And I don't exactly remember everything, but it was like a bunch of battle destinies. It was Hera and like Han and maybe Screaming Lando. I think I was drawn 3. And I blew him out of the system, and like I think he took like at least took him out of the system. I think I did some overflow too, but I took out like 2-3 pilots and like 2 ships. And so I'm sitting there, and so I lose a character. He didn't draw great, and so but he doesn't try and go back to space yet. So he's spreading on the ground. He gets a couple characters out on ticks over the AC and the pit on Tatooine, and this is where I make a poor mistake, which is I go to Tatooine with a couple characters, and so I'm draining 2 at the system because launching is in effect, and I have a Star Cruiser up there. But then I go to ground at the pit to try and stop taking those court pings, and I just kind of get beat up. I get Greedoed, and I end up taking over 10 overflow back. So I think whatever I did in overflow to him, I took back at a battle at the pit. And afterwards, he pointed out like one of the things I've added to the TRM build is I do add the battle planes, the 2/2 Naboo site. A lot of times using your Wisas to pull your Boss Nass Chamber, which is a 2/0, but you should just put the 2/2 in as well. You're going to have a lot of Wisas. You're going to cycle them. You could find it. And if you don't need it in a matchup, you could pitch it to a drain. But what and he pointed it out, and it's true, is I really should have, he had put a lot of forces on Tatooine. I was secure in space. Should have put characters at the 2/2 battle planes and a guy with the sabers draining for 3 and 5 total. And I probably win that race without taking a bunch of overflow. But I didn't do that. I went to the pit, and nothing good happens at the pit. So he beats me out and takes the win there. Game 2, playing ISB against David Woods. He's playing Luke's Saga. And so again, I expected to see this all weekend. Actually, it turns out I did not end up seeing it most of the weekend, but and so we're just kind of starting things up. I'm decided pretty early. He's gonna do the Polis Massa pole chain. I'm gonna stick the spaceport docking bay there. It'll reduce the drains at his own system, and then I'll still have my own battleground system to move back and forth with. But I figure out pretty early he's got a little bit of I think it might have been an older build, so it wasn't quite the Luke Saga we've been seeing in the last couple of months. And I stacked the spaceport docking bay with like Tarkin, Kallus, and 2 other Imperials, so it's pretty beefy. But I'm expecting Luke to come to play. He drops Luke in front of me, and then tries to pull the saber, and he misses. And so I get a verify, and I see a bunch of punch-its and Gift of the Mentor and Jedi Presence and all that, which afterwards totally makes sense. David's very much kind of a combo deck guy. He likes to get this 50-60 power. So, it seemed a little more like a Hitco build, which is what you're kind of seeing. But then he drops that in front of me, and with no saber, and he has no backup. And so I get to battle into him with Tarkin, Kallus, Dark Collab, and then canceling a Battle Destiny. And so I'm pretty sure he had to peel a bunch from that battle. And then, but Luke and sabers are coming back, and he does find the saber, and I eventually go to space, and he's got the Han, Chewie, and the Falcon, all 3 cards together. And I'm starting to move in front of him to block, because that'll become a drain 2. So I was expecting punch it. What I was not expecting was I battle into him. He punches it, which I believe I grab, or I'm going to limit with command. But then he also plays the battle damage tripler, which I think I got a bad feeling about this, which is really not great. But we had to look at it a little more carefully. Turns out you have to initiate the battle, and you have to be underpowered. But the way it actually set up, he actually had slightly more power than me. I was doing like a full Eli with a Dreadnought, so didn't have enough power I wasn't overpowering him, so he couldn't play the tripler. So we still got the punch it in there. I don't think he drew very well, and I lost a guy, and then I could keep battling into him. So I eventually do a couple damages of overflow and start clearing him off, and so I get the win there against the kind of the combo heavy Luke Saga deck. On the crackback, I play Chris Westergaard and Battle Droid Invasion. He had kind of a mean Battle Droid deck with blaster racks and laser cannon batteries and all of that stuff. He gets a bunch of guys down to the throne room. He briefly flips, but then I do take over the throne room again. He kind of spreads away. So he's flipped, but not for very long, which I think is what you're kind of trying to do as TRM. You want to take over that throne room, but then I had to kind of spread, but I wasn't really doing a lot of damage. I don't think I had a saber that added to drains at the site. And so, but I do eventually get home 1 together. He had pulled a second system. I think he pulled Kashyyyk. And of course, he's got Naboo. But he's flipped at this point, so Naboo is a non-battleground, and I can't go there. So we are playing kind of like Peekaboo in space and things like that. I do end up getting home 1 shot off of a defensive fire and laser cannon battery, which is not great. But I did a bunch of damage, cleared a bunch of that off, and I'm kicking him off the sites. He's throwing droids back on racks, but then they're not a lot of power, and they're very card intensive. So he's starting to run low on cards, and it really turns into this kind of like everyone's stacked at their own site with very low, force and reserve to deploy and move things. And so it actually ends up going to time, which I don't think TRM should ever go to time, but I'm a bad player. So ends with 5 force to 5 force. So we're tied on life force. And then it goes to lost piles, which I win by 1 card. And we pointed out after the fact, but Invasion puts your interrupts out of play if you draw them for Battle Destiny. He did that at least twice. So so those cards are out of play. They don't count in your lost pile. So that lost pile decreased from his objective actually got me the win there. So so game 4, ISB, I'm playing Nick Swedell. I hope I say his name right. He's playing Speeders. We've actually played this like probably about a week ago prior to the event. and it's a matchup I really like. With this form of ISB, I really like an opponent that's going to put out a lot of related sites and the system, because you could really stack 1 or 2 sites with ISB, and your drain reductions work at the system in addition to the sites themselves. So if they're, sometimes a lot of objectives only put out like a drain 1 system, and that'll just reduce it to 0. Or sometimes if it's a drain 2, then it's a drain 1, but that's 1 damage that I'm just going to retrieve back with the ISB objective. So I really like that, because that puts me in a very comfortable position. I don't feel compelled to go to space. I might pay to drain at a site or 2, but I don't feel compelled to go to space until I'm really ready, until I've built that hand up. But just you gotta stick strong on the ground and all of that. So and that's what I did. He's got all the speeders, and he's got the Lukes and the wedges and all of that stuff. And here I am. I'm pretty sure I'm over at Fondor draining there, or I'd moved over to the other docking bay and was draining to some. It's a slow grind, but I'm getting damage in. And he's not doing much. I'm retrieving some of that damage back with the ISB objective. And the other thing with speeders is like, well, they really like to react all around. In that ISB deck, one of my other teammates, Matt Wadden, said, "You're playing Emperor. Put a sense in there. It's not gonna. It might catch people off guard because you're not expecting ISB to play sense. That's all these low ability characters, but generally you're gonna have an ability 7 character at a non-battleground, but they'll be there." And so I put that in, and so I was, the speeders deck really wants to react back and forth. They want to react to battles and move about and spread. But then I was like, well, what if I just don't battle him? Like, he's not going to move in. If he moved in front of me, maybe I'll battle. But then I got a good battle in later when I had the react canceler. So he tried to move one. He moved one over. Then he tried to move the second guy over, and I reacted. I sensed to cancel the react. So there was that kind of like, again, because I was feeling comfortable with what I was doing, was willing to kind of wait and kind of drag it out a little bit, which is I think why people hate playing ISB. But it felt really good, and he had sand. That was the other thing. So he had sand out, and I had multiple dark collaborations, which adds 2 Battle Destiny. But you don't want to play that into a sand card. It's a lost interrupt. They're just going to sand anyway. So, but I had Callus on the ground, drawing a 2nd Battle Destiny. So I was trying to get us into battles that weren't bad for me, but then compel him to pull the sands off, the 2 cards off sand. Because then once he does, then Dark Collab, 4 Destiny, I'm going to cancel 1. And that's what happened. So I was able to kind of wear him out of those sand cards. And then I was able to kind of knock out a bunch of the speeders and kind of take over that and win the day. So end of the Friday night event, 3-1. It felt really good. I did not make any changes to my TRM deck. The only change that I made to ISB is I took a card out. I don't recall which one now at this point. And I threw a 3rd Dark Collaboration in there, because it can just win you the game if you can get them off. And having an extra one, I think, is just really, really helpful. So let's just talk about the main event. It was a great main event. Carl and the Ohio guys got this really great event space at the convention center. It's not in the hotel, but it's connected to it. And so a lot of space. There's restaurants outside, which was great when they were open, but they weren't always open. But there was great food nearby, which there are pictures about later. So, all right, I'm playing the same decks. Get down there, 45 players, amped, ready to go. I get the game 1 bye. And I'm like, God damn it. Like, it's, buys are buys, it happens. But like, game 1's tough because like you're all fired up. You're ready to go. You're like, let's do this thing. I'm already like, you're just kind of a little like tensed up, ready to go. And then you get that letdown of like, well, you're actually not playing yet. So, but I was just like not going to sit in the game room for an hour while that all went down. So I took like a half-hour walk. I'm like, I got a little more coffee. I'm like, because I can't be in there just thinking about the next game. I just have to be like ready to go. And I'll come back in 45 minutes and I'll still be there with plenty of time, which is what I did. So started the day 1-0. That's a great way to do it. Second game, play David Woods again. I'm playing that ISB, and he's playing No Idea. No Idea is a deck I know very well, which I think there's definitely a theme here. Like when I played against decks that I know very well, I did well, and the converse was also true. I had a really interesting interaction with this matchup about earlier this year. I just remember because it stood out to me. I was playing No Idea, and my Kessling was playing ISB, and he did a first turn ISB agent to my War Room. And it sounds really risky to go to your 2-0, especially if they're going to pull Battle Plan or they'll pull Coward or something. It was so strange it stood out to me. I asked him about it after the game. He's like, we've tested this before. It really puts the No Idea player on the back foot. They don't have a lot of ways to punish you for it because they're cheap to Scarif, but not otherwise. Outside of bays, they don't generally have a lot of ways of, making your forfeit 0 with weapons. So like they're either going to leave you alone where you're going to eventually satisfy Coward, satisfy Battle Plan, and then you're training for 2 again, or they're going to devote extra resources there, or they're going to go faster before they would really want to, because No Idea wants to set up slowly, needs to build its hand and build its character base. So I just go command for Ozzel and first turn to the War Room for free, draw a bunch of cards. And he looked at me funny too. He's like, that seems strange to me. I think he went to space quick and then pulled Coward. So I can't drain there, but that's okay. I'm fine with it. I set up my turns carefully. I'm able to get a couple guys to those non-battleground docking bays, and then I stick the spaceport docking bay at Scarif and move everybody over. In this big turn, I generated 15 force, was able to put everyone down, and then he sticks a bunch of characters at the beach. Actually, no, he goes to space heavy, and then he is trying to set up at the beach a little bit, but I still have my best characters in hand. I have my Callus, I have my Tarkin, and someone else in hand. But what I also have in hand are 2 Neville Yalnals, which are a way to make spies immediately lost. It's really bad against ISB. There is a character that protects against it. It's the Taidu Self-Love card, but he had put it to space. And so I knew that those would go through. I'd gotten a verify, and I think I had to command to pull my Navarre out the deck, but then otherwise I knew everyone else was going to kill the 2 spies. And I have these 2 lost interrupts that make a spy lost, and they're non-unique. So I drop all my characters to the beach, Yalnal his Cassian, and I Yalnal his Chirrut. So all he has is a lone Saw who doesn't draw on his own. Saw is also a really bad card against ISB because he does add to attrition, but he keeps you from reducing your drains. So you want to get rid of that too. So double Yalnal, kill the other 2 characters, and I'm drawing a bunch of power against his. He has to kick out. I'm pretty sure I grabbed the kick so he can't spread again. He eventually does come down against my Ozzel, but he comes down with an Ezra that draws on its own. But then No Idea's destinies are really poor, so he draws a destiny, but it's not enough to cause any overflow between my power and forfeit. So I just lose the Ozzel and I move on with my day, and he's got his Ezra stuck at his non-battleground. And so then he also has sand. So I gotta again chew through those sand cards, and I'd also found my Dark Collabs again. So I do what you're not supposed to do, which is stack a bunch of guys at the beach against them because they have a lot of power there. But then I Dark Collabing, had Mara there swinging her saber, and so I really just chew him down, and then I get the win there. So, but the Never Yalnals really did it for me, and kind of a dirty card. My third game of the event, I get Throne Remains against Matthew Harrison Trainer, a fantastic player, playing Endor Ops. So this is my first real test at TRM this weekend. In the main event, I hit my activation, which is great. I think I found the Boss Nass Chamber, and I found the Jedi Council Chamber. I got the home 1 quickly. I think I found the launching, and so I got the home 1, but I couldn't find the Akbar. But this is one area I really screwed up, and he pointed it out to me after the game. MHT1, spoiler alert. But he was like, it was so strange. He had a hard time finding your Akbar to go with your home 1. And I was realizing I had leaderships to pull him, but I was throwing it back with 3PO to draw other cards. I was thinking about the fact that he was playing EOPS. I'm not getting more than 1 Battle Destiny, so why bother? But then I can't go to space. I can't pressure him there, and he's draining for 2 in space. He puts characters on the ground that I'm carefully plinking away at. He has Emperor kind of floating around that I kind of avoid because I'm worrying about Force Lightning, which turns out afterwards he doesn't have. And so I feel like I play it really, really strong and tight, and I make him earn it. But he's draining on the ground. Or a little bit drains on the ground. I'm draining on the ground, but he's draining in space. That drain of 2 just finally adds up. I'm playing around Force Lightning, he doesn't have it, and then eventually I have to move to block, and I get into a really bad battle with Blizzard 4 and Mara, and that really kind of sealed the game there. So I don't know if you folks believe in good losses and playing someone really, really tight that's a much better player, but I feel like that was an example there that I could have just gotten blown out by this guy, which I did in Champions League last year. So, but he's a very nice guy. We got to discuss the merits of calling his former university Cal or Berkeley. And so it was a great time. I'm glad I got a chance to meet him. Game 4, I'm playing Keith Brown. He's playing Rescue the Princess. I got a bit of a slow start, and he went pretty fast. I think he didn't fear my stuff as much, and I think maybe he got the right good cards in hand. Rescue the Princess is a really tough matchup because they're going to cancel battles. ISB doesn't like all those guns. They have low defense value and all of that. So, but you have to interact with them. You can't just leave them alone. They'll drain for too much, and you can't just like sit at the site and just not. You could reduce their drains, but they're still doing so much damage. So I go light to space. I get my system out. He had already put Luke down, so I didn't fear space at all. But I had really kind of crafted my hand to really get a big battle in against Luke and Obi, or Han and Obi. I had Callus, Tarkin, a bunch of guys. I also had Kirkanos too, which is really important because you can cancel and interrupt. So I was expecting a Blast the Door kid. So I'm like, well, I can drop that down. He's going to try and cancel with Blast. I could cancel that and get a big battle in, or force him to put Obi out of play or something like that. But it wasn't meant to be. He blasts the Door kid. I'm pretty sure I grab, cancel with Kier. He has a second Blast the Door kid that he has enough save to pay for. Maybe I didn't grab it. I didn't maybe expect the second one. But I have the sense on the Emperor to cancel that one, but he has alter combo to cancel sense. So it was just like crazy. Like we're having a sack war in the year 2025, but he won the sack war. But I did everything I could, and it just didn't. And then once that happens, once you cancel the battle and he could battle his own turns, Han shoots a control phase. He drops another guy down, and you just get beaten up, which is what I expected. I knew I had one shot at it, and I thought I had the right angle on it. It just didn't work out. If that second Blastador isn't there, or the sense goes through, I think I get a lot of damage in, and maybe the game goes differently. But it didn't, and that's what happens. Game 5, somewhere in there we get a break for lunch, but I have a picture about that I'm going to go back to. We did the North Market, which was a fantastic place. I devoted a whole slide to it. Game 5, I'm playing ISB against Cal Alder, and he's playing TRM. So I think a bunch of the Team 5 guys had settled on TRM for this event. I think they also had arrived at the idea of putting Profundity in there too. So, but I called it on Slack that I arrived at it independently. I didn't want people to think I was copying Team 5. But he gets Battle Planes comes out. We're leaving my sites away. He's going to put a bunch of guys down. I get the Profundity to space, he gets Profundity out to space. And he puts Luke down at the Battle Planes. I come down with Mara, and I'm able to hit him, which he's not easy to hit. He's 7, and it was a Rebel Scout and cost redraws and things like that. But I hit him. He has a Wisa that I have a sense for, and so hits goes through. And then we go back and forth, and then he drops Yoda, I believe Yoda by himself to the Battle Planes by himself, and I'm able to come back with a big stack with Callus and Tarkin. Very, very, what a surprise, Callus and Tarkin again. I get a bunch of overflow in on him. But, TRM is counterbeating there. So I was really worried about what the counterbeat was going to be. And I had a couple ISB agents, and I had Sergeant Tarl was key to this moment here. He dropped down Obi with lightsaber and Qui-Gon with lightsaber. And so I think Cal made a bit of a misplay there. He had forgotten about Tarl's text, which can blank a Rebels game text. And so he's initiating probably what he should have done is swung with Obi first, because he swung with Qui-Gon first. Then I get next action. I cancel his game text, which means he doesn't get the second swing. And then I have a couple Destiny, and he draws poorly, and I draw high, and he I drew a couple 5s, and he had decided he'd had enough there. I was going to beat him up real bad on the way back, and but he had just kind of forgotten that text on Tarl, and that really makes it really tough because those things do matter. I'm here at game, so this is after 5 games. I'm 3-2. I've never won more than 3 games at a major, and I really told myself I wanted to get to 4-4 at a minimum or better. And so here I have 3 cracks at it. And so this is, this hurts because I lost 3 in a row after that. And I think there's definitely an issue, and it's happened at the last event. I'd gotten to 3 wins. I'm like, if I get this last one, I'll be where I want to be. And I got nervous and I pressed too hard. But so game 6, I play Robbie, playing TRM. He's playing walkers. But actually, I had a really good start for this. I get home 1 to space quickly. I think I found launching in the war room. So I get to space. I'm draining for 2. Like, that's great. I don't think he puts out his own system. Found my activation quickly. And then, he's doing his thing on Hoth. And I get the battle planes out. I'm like, I'm going to go to the battle planes. Honor's going to reduce the damage from the blowing up the generators. Drain for 2 here. Drain for 2 here. And just start pound that damage in, and maybe if I have to take over a site there, I could do that later at Hoth. But I drop a lone Leia Organa to the battle planes, and that was a big mistake because he came back with Blizzard 4, Grand Moff Tarkin, and Thrawn for two Battle Destiny, and you overflow me by like 12, like pretty early in the game, and like that's not good. I think I go back at him and I crack back and I think I kill everything, but now I'm behind in the reserve deck race. So that's really big mistake number 1. And then big mistake number 2 was he had gotten Imperial Decree turned on, which you have to control 2 rebel base sites. So he has 1 walker and he puts Kylo to the non-battleground, the 5th marker, I think. And I made a really bad mistake by not counting his force pile properly, because I had Ezra in hand, who's a spy, and go to that non-battleground. I really want to take him off 2 battlegrounds, and so I play. I thought he had 1 force saved, and so I was going to drop Ezra in front of the EPP Kylo, who's beefy in his own right and has a weapon, does damage. I was going to battle into him. I have too close for comfort. So I'm going to make him, he won't have the force to spend, can't swing, and then we're likely just trading because it's 5. We're about 5 power 4. I'm not expecting Ezra to win to survive, but I draw Destiny, clears him, he clears him, and I don't take any damage. Well, he had 2 force saved. I didn't look at it carefully enough. Play the too close. Of course, he pays for it. Hits Ezra, does a damage. Now he's forfeit 0, and then I take overflow from it too because he drew well and I drew really poor. So he had found no escape quickly and got Decree going. So I lose that game. I'm just too far behind, and I don't want to take anything away from Robbie. He's definitely a good player, but there's examples where your opponent beats you, and then there's times where you beat yourself, and this was an example of where I thought I beat myself. If I don't drop Leia down without backup, or the Ezra play was really bad, I'm not going to say I would have won it, but the game would have gone differently. I took 20 overflow from both of those mistakes that were very much self-inflicted. And so Robbie took advantage when I didn't play well. So here I am. I'm in game 7. I'm sitting down against Greg Shaw. I played Greg a bunch of times this year, and I've ran into him at the last major. And I'm playing ISB. He flips over OA. And so like I was saying earlier, I really like those games where there's a lot of sites and a related system. You could turn off the drain bonuses. The Falcon drain becomes one of the system until I get a bunch of guys that are ready to go after him. And I'm probably reducing a lot of the damage on his ground drains. And then I can just really stack up and fortify and get ready. Well, that's if it's a normal OA. But he flips over Saitor Kalphos, the matching weapon effect, which I've never seen in OA before. And I'm like, what is going on? Well, he had a very clever build using Lor San Tekka, which moves a resistance character in control phase. And he had Leia Saber and Anakin Saber. That the new Leia Saber came out of the latest V set. So he could put a Saber on Leia, put a Saber on Rey, and then move them in control phase. So either to set up beatdowns, or which he did on me once or twice, but then also he could spread them in control. He could stack everybody, spread them in control phase, and drain for like 7 or 8 because the Sabers are adding to drains. So that was very clever, and it definitely threw me for a loop. But I realized I had to be a lot more careful when I saw them, like because he could have forfeit reducing weapons, and that gets really, really bad. So, but then the other thing I did is I went really light to space to my own Fondor system, because he had already put a bunch of guys up at Jakku. But I was getting 2 battle deaths up there. I put Baron on the Eli Vanto and Dreadnought, but then he had Poe and Gold Leader and Gold 1. So, and I only had 1 force save, so I couldn't draw the 2 Destiny, and so he drew enough to kill the whole thing. And so I did get Conquest going eventually, and I stacked his system, and I was drawing a bunch, and I was starting to turn the tide. I was drawing multiple Destinies. I grabbed his leadership, and so I'm starting to kind of get the damage through. I'm trying to mitigate on the ground, and so I think I did a good job of trying to close the gap. But he did win on time with a couple force differential. I think I might have conceded right before, because he had definitely had the game in hand, and he was probably already ahead to begin with. But very clever build, and I'm curious if we'll see a little more of that. He told me later that the Destiny wasn't great, so trying to hit mains with that's probably going to be bad. But it was very clever to see something a little new that I wasn't expecting. So then game 8, again, I have one more shot at trying to get to 500, and I get TRM, or I get TRM'd. I do. I play TRM, and I'm running into Barry Alperstein, and he's playing the 12 card EOPS, the drop and drain variety. So you drop a bunch of little dudes to sites, maybe free ones or 1 drops, and then you have barriers and telepathies and a couple Gicks. So you just go super fast, go to all these sites, threaten a ton of damage, and then if you don't have a canceler for barrier or the projective or something, you're going to be in trouble. He's going to do so much damage and just kind of run you over. And so he set up really fast. I did not hit my activation at all. I didn't have Polar in the opening hand, and I think I drew the first turn. And this was another reason where I was definitely pressing too hard. I thought I had to do something about this right now. And so it's like there's a lot of damage coming. And again, in the back of my head, I'm thinking, I really need to win this game. I really need to win this game. And I have Profundity in my hand and a character, enough to battle his. He put a Lambda shuttle up there. Again, that really, really fast stuff. He's probably not expecting a lot of big space out of me, and I don't have enough to put home 1 down. But I'm thinking to myself, I have played this EOPS 12 card before. It probably has barrier. I don't have a barrier canceler, but at the same time, I'm like, I just need to, I'm in this spot where I'm like, I just need to find out if he has it. And so I go Tyderia or Profundity. I also have Akbar in hand, who does add a 2 Destiny, or has a 2nd Destiny. He doesn't have EOPS flipped. I don't think they ever do. So I do have 2 Destiny in space. And I'm like, this is it. Like, if I get this down, I'm going to blow him up for a bunch, and maybe he's got a Gick, but then I have the system all wrapped up, and he has barrier, which again, fully think like he likely doesn't play. I mean, you have a lot, that deck has a lot of evasion, but I'm like, I got to see if he does. Maybe he didn't find one, and maybe he's just going real fast, but he has barrier. So I can't battle. He comes back with Emperor and Shuttle, and then I start trying to contest him on the ground, but it's too late, and then at that point he had sent a guy to my Boss Nash chamber and a guy to my other 2-0, and he's just doing what that deck is supposed to do, and I probably dragged it out a little longer than he would have wanted, but I didn't really want to quit on it, and I'm like, maybe I can get a beat in, and I eventually got him for a beat, but then he's got a Gick, and he's going to spread around and start pinging me everywhere. So Barry did get that win, and it was really cool that I got some good advice from him afterwards, and he was just kind of telling me, like, told him at the end, I'm like, I'm so worried about all this damage you're going through. He's like, you could probably take that damage for like 1 or 2 turns and like build your hand or save a bunch of force, find a barrier canceler, and then go after me. And he also admitted, like, this matchup could go differently if I hit activation, which I don't. But again, that's what Throne Room does sometimes. So you guys are sick of seeing my ugly mug. I was gonna go um, talk about some of the food this weekend. Let's have a nice little change of pace. So this is the Columbus North Market. We took it. This was between games, I think 3 and 4. We started the event early and then so we could have a long lunch and go to this. So it's a really cool open market food hall that's becoming more and more popular everywhere across the country. But it was fantastic food because the food in the convention center food court was really not good. I tried it a little bit and it was just fine. But this food here was excellent. I was actually quite surprised for a Midwest city that there was so much diversity in food in these areas. There was North African food and Mongolian food and Polish food, of course. I got the pierogies, but then there was like Indian food and Thai and the Momo dumplings that were pretty popular against a lot of people. So I got some really good pierogies and lettuce wraps. And so it did make for a longer day because we took a long lunch break, but I think it was, well worth it. And I think most people would agree that it was a really good way to spend the extra time. And down here was all the places and stalls, and all the seating was up above, and really cool setup, and definitely one of the highlights of the weekend. And they had all sorts of pepper places and cheese places and just all sorts of cool stuff. So it was a great way to spend Saturday. And then Sunday we did, I think it was Bud Dairy Farm. There's the picture with Brian, Fred, and the cow. But we did that on Sunday night after the main event had wrapped up. And so nice little like food court with a bunch of different drinks and food and old fashions from the bar, which I had too many of those. We were able to talk. I sat next to Keith and Greg and Casey and Taco Bell, and we all talked about the 90s pop punk that was playing over the speakers, and just had a really good time connecting with people. And Sunday night we try and do like a big dinner at these events, but I'm usually like really tapped out by these. Like the social battery's just so drained, and I was 5 minutes away from not going to this thing at all. I'm like, I just want to sit in my room and get some food, and then everyone's going to come back and we'll play games, and then we'll have a great time with it. But Ryan Serson convinced me to go, and so I did, and had a wonderful time. We ate a bunch of food, and then one of the most spontaneous parts of the weekend happened, which is I decided to walk back from this thing. I think it was like a mile and a half. So I got a ride out there from Garrett Larson. He was very kind enough to drive us out afterwards. He wasn't going to dinner, but he offered to drive us out. So the convention center was over here, and looks like it was like a mile and a half away to get to this Bud Dairy food hall. So I caught the ride. I was a little tired, but then I had 2 old fashions, and I was having a great time. And then a bunch of people decided, oh, it's a nice, it was a Sunday evening. It was probably like 7 o'clock. Sun was still out, and a bunch of people decided they were going to walk back. And I was already starting to get a little. I drank on an empty stomach. I was a little loaded, so like a bunch of the Pacific Northwest guys decided they wanted to walk back. So Cal and Werfs, and I'm sorry if I forget anybody, but Joe, and then oh my gosh, Card Shark's name. I'll get to it. And then like Nick Swedell, like we all Phil decided they all were going to walk back, and I'm just sitting around. I'm chatting with people. I'm drunk on old fashions, and I'm like, shit, I'll walk back with you. It sounds great. I want a little exercise. And so, but we took this very like roundabout thing through these neighborhoods of like beautiful brick lined homes, and then we ended up on High Street, which is this fun little like downtown core with bars and all that stuff. It was just a really fun walk. Got to connect with a couple folks. Many props to Werfs and Cal, who were very intent on leading the way, and we were giving them so much grief that you're getting us lost. What are you doing? Just giving them just playful shit. But they did lead us all the way home. So many props to them on that. I took a couple other pictures. This is the convention center itself, or this is the hotel that we stayed in. The convention center is on the right-hand side. Much glass and space frames and all of that kind of stuff. nice, cool little seating area right outside the Heroes and Games store, and all of that stuff. So it was a really cool space. I think I have another picture of that. Oh, I took a picture. This is, you can see the hotel in the distance there, but I go to a lot of cities, and I saw this Flatiron, which reminded me of the Flatiron building in New York City. I'm sure it's named after that because it's kind of the same size and all of that stuff. But just wanted to share a couple of pictures. And this was High Street. This actually was taken on that drunken walk home on Sunday night. Sun was setting. It was beautiful Midwest weather. It was just like a really great way to kind of cap off the weekend and get a little exercise in. I probably needed it after the food and drink and all of that stuff. Wanted to say one more thing. I last couple events I've been trying to like add a couple of prizes to the prize pool to help things out, just make things a little more fun. So I bought these little Buckeye nuts that are doing the Ohio thing. And so I bought 2 sets of these, shipped them to Carl like 4 or 5 months ago, and said, hey, hold on to these. We'll use them for the event somehow. And didn't have any idea. Turns out I was not the only person that had the idea to add extra prizes, because Carl did the T-shirts and Kendall had some extra prizes and all that stuff. So I had given these out. What I decided to do was, there were about 4 people, mostly from the Minnesota contingent, that was kind of like their first major, or maybe it was their second. And so during the Saturday consolation or Sunday consolation, I dropped a little Buckeye on their reserve deck, and so they all got a little extra thing. I hope it didn't break in their luggage when they got home. And then I gave the extra 4 to some of the Ohio guys, Kendall, Carl, Chad, and then I think maybe Brad. But I kind of wanted to give the Ohio guys a little bit of their props too, because they did such a good job with the weekend and really doing a lot to make this happen. And they were talking during the event about how they did like a 4 or 5 person event a couple of years back, and now we're doing a 45 person major. So that was really cool to kind of see all that and really share this really cool space. So I took a couple fun other pictures of the weekend, which was, I thought this was a real emblematic of the weekend. So this is during the consolation. This is Ryan Surson playing AJ, and just kind of a reflection on the fact that like we kind of play a really, like we play a competitive game, we play a challenging game, but it also can be a fun game, and it also can be a really silly game. So just for a little bit of context, this is consolation here. Ryan is a huge Mind What You Have Learned fan, and he's got the oversized objective, and so he decides he's going to pull this bad boy out, take it for a spin. And then AJ is a Minnesota guy, and what the Minnesota guys have a tradition at the consolations is they will like randomly swap decks with each other of the decks they played on Saturday, and then they'll play those decks on Sunday. So a lot of times those guys are, I mean, they're all good players, but they're also getting maybe weird decks or decks they don't know very well. And so AJ had this TTO deck with TIE bombers and proton bombs to collapse sites. I think it was Mark Waltz's build or something like that. So, but just a little bit wonky. And so I don't actually know how the game ended, but I just wrapped up my game, and there's an oversized Mind What You Have Learned objective. There's a collapsed site. There's just all sorts of like silliness. Oh, and then the Brian Fred cow picture in front of the Bud Dairy is the sleeves on Surson's cards. And so it was just kind of a reminder, like, no, it can be competitive, it can be challenging, you can, have tough matches, but like we do need to kind of remember, like, it is still very much a fun game, and we all could benefit from appreciating it kind of that way. I threw in the picture, the group photo we took at the end there, and like what a crazy group of people that we got for a card game that's been out of print for 30 years. It was a really great event, and the people are what makes it so worthwhile. So again, super big props, especially to those Ohio guys. They were so instrumental in kind of putting this on. Got to meet Brad Iyer. He needed help with some decks, so I built some decks for him this weekend. It was good to kind of connect with him. We got paired up in Champions League last year, and so it was good to actually meet him and got to help him out with decks he was able to play this weekend, and hope he had some fun. So again, it was a really great event. I was going to talk about the Sunday consolation, but that stuff went I've just learned to just talk too much apparently, but decided to go back with Clones and Huntdown for the Sunday consolation. Clones did really well for me. I was able to take down a couple EOPs, and what's the other one? I had a really great game against First Order Reigns. Played Huntdown, which has been poor for me lately, and it went 0-3. I had a game where Joe Olson probably beat me in 7 minutes, like start to finish. And then I ran into that OA, Greg Shaw's OA with the matching weapons. That didn't go well, but had 2 good EOPS games. I was able to take down some dudes with Force Lightning with the clones, which you're not expecting to do. I got into a sack war with Carl over Sorry About the Mess that I was able to come out on top on for the Sorry About the Mess. And then, but yeah, last game of the tournament. This actually happened in the last couple of tournaments, but I'm playing my clones, and then I'm playing Heath Brown. He's playing the First Order Reigns. I expected to play that deck a lot this weekend, and I think it was a well-played deck, but I didn't hit the matchups. I hadn't played it since, so I was really curious to see how it would go, and it was a really interesting game. He's got a bunch of those guys' systems. I don't have any space in my clones deck, so it's all ground damage. But then he gets Imperial Decree set up very quickly, so it's going to cut down my Force Drain bonuses. And so I know that I'm not going to be able to just stay by my sites and do damage. I'm going to have to try and kick them off sites best I can. And so I get a good battle in with Rex and Anakin and Cody, and Kylo, and I cancel his Desi, draw a couple, and so I got a big little beat in. I've taken over one of his crate sites, but he's still draining me in space. And I'm just kind of chasing him around, and he's got the 2 crate sites. I get a bunch of my guys over there, so I've turned off his decree, so I'm getting more damage through. I'm pinging with blasters, but I'm recurring clones from the lost pile. That's what clones do. But then also the First Order could recur walkers and troopers from the lost pile. So we were both bringing those troopers back, and so it was a really great back and forth or grindy game, I guess is what people would call it. But then time gets called, and it was a really close game, and I think I was able to get a couple little extra damage in because he was shield broken, and so I could retrieve a couple. But anyway, the game wasn't over yet, and it wasn't fully decided yet either at that point. Sometimes when games go to time, they're already decided, and this one was so close that it really wasn't. And so, but because it was the last game of the tournament, what Keith offered, he's like, "You're ahead right now. We'll give you the win on time, but let's play it out. Let's see how it ends." And I misunderstood what he meant at first, because I was like, I played the last turn, and I picked up my cards. Like, no, let's play it out. Let's see what actually happens. And so I get the win on time, and we really wanted to see how, and it went on for another 2.5 turns. It was really, really tight, and just I think it was really interesting being able to, in a big tournament like this, you're not able to finish those games because time's called, and you can't just keep playing it out because then you're holding up the entire tournament, and that's really rude, right? You don't want to draw that out, but because it was the last game of the tournament, and I apologize. I'm like, "Hey man, I'm sorry I'm taking so long on this," and Keith's like, "No, I'm having a great time." So we decided to just play that whole, and then the finals for the top 8 were still going on. So it was like there was no harm in us keep playing if we wanted to, because we're not holding anybody else up, and we were both having a really good game. And so that was a really cool thing to kind of finish that out, because again, you won't, in most circumstances, you don't get the opportunity to what could have happened, because you have to finish it and move on to the next game and all of that stuff. So wanted to also hat tip Keith there. That was a really fun game, and I'm glad we could kind of share in that together. So that was Ohio. It was a great time. I'm really glad I could make it. It was very touch and go for a while if I was even going to be healthy enough to go, but I did, and I'm really happy we made it. And thanks to everyone who attended, watched the streams, followed us on Slack, and I wish you all the best, and may the force be with you.